It is the agenda for the 21st century you're living in today. For a brave new world where everything that you cherished and held true will no longer exist.
Parkwood Station Road and Star Road completely flooded in all directions.
An Arctic blast is hitting the Great Lakes. We have two reports. First, DeMarco Morgan in upstate New York. DeMarco?
Scott, the people here in Watertown are in for a long night. Up to 2 feet of snow could blanket the northern and western part of the state by the end of the week. Heavy lake effect snow and a blizzard warning in Calumet, Michigan stopped some drivers right in their tracks, making walking the quickest mode of transportation, even in 4 degrees. Farther east in Buffalo, New York, whiteout conditions forced a battle between man and nature. The combination of snowfall and whipping 45-mile-per-hour winds led to stressful white-knuckle driving in Watertown. A steady band of snow started falling early this morning, enough to keep plow driver Bruce Riom busy.
The main thing that really surprises me when I'm out here doing this is people don't slow down. I've seen people pass me while I'm out clearing the roads, and a mile up the road I'll see them in the ditch.
I'm Jamie Yukas in Stillwater, Minnesota, where it is currently 3 degrees, but with the wind chill, it feels like it's 14 below. Those are perfect conditions to make these man-made ice castles, but not so great if you're not bundled up. Exposed skin can get frostbite in minutes. And Scott, tomorrow morning, it's supposed to only be 10 degrees below zero.
Cleveland is just one of the cities on the Great Lakes getting hit by wintry weather. Early morning snowfall made it tough for drivers in northern Ohio to see on Thursday. And things are bound to get even more difficult with extreme cold on the way. Wind chill advisories are already stretching from North Dakota and Minnesota all the way to Ohio and Pennsylvania. Wind chills are dropping well below zero in the upper Midwest. Western and upstate New York are already dealing with heavy lake effect snow ahead of the cold snap. Snowfall could reach 1 to 2 feet in some places. A snowstorm hit Portland, Oregon on Wednesday, leaving commuters who tried to drive home early stuck on roads for hours. Some school buses were also stuck, with kids still inside. Other children had to wait out the storm at school.
I know that one bus was stuck on the Fremont Bridge for several hours, and so an alternate bus has been called, and that's what's on its way now.
The bitter cold is expected to affect the northern half of the country, with the deep freeze lasting until Monday.
Traffic was stopped. I tried to stop. I got pushed over into the other lane, and I stopped, and other cars started coming along. Truck passed over. He was going about 60, got into the ditch, and then it just started piling up after that.
Meanwhile, here back at home, bitter temperatures and heavy snow continue to grip parts of the Great Lakes and Northeast areas around Buffalo, New York. In fact, are experiencing this, essentially whiteout conditions. Up to a foot of snow could fall in the greater Buffalo area by tomorrow. Now, adding more cold to injury is the wind. The wind chill factor is awful out there. If you look at the map, purple's bad. It would appear the northern half of the country then is bad, and the numbers just tell a brutal story.
The sixth and final supermoon of 2016 was an incredible sight for sky gazers. Just take a look. It provided a majestic backdrop for Greece's historic Parthenon temple. Now, a supermoon occurs when the moon is at its closest to Earth. That's about 361,000 kilometers, just over that, actually. And it makes it appear bigger and brighter than usual. This one was special because it coincided with the Germanid meteor shower. Now, the next supermoon, I'm afraid you're going to have to wait a while. It won't be around until December of 2017.
Bloomberg recently reported that the Trump administration has asked the Department of Energy to provide a list of employees who worked on climate change programs. We're now learning the Department of Energy has refused to comply with this request from his transition team out of fear that they were undertaking, quote, a witch hunt to single out those workers. Current laws and regulations make it illegal to fire or punish civil service workers for political purposes. Earlier this week, scientists in multiple government agencies tasked with monitoring climate change began to frantically copy reams of government data onto independent servers in hopes of safeguarding it from potential political interference from a future Trump administration.
Earth is due for an extinction-level asteroid hit. That's according to a NASA researcher who presented the warning to fellow scientists Monday. He says while these civilization-killing types of asteroids are extremely rare, they tend to hit 50 to 60 million years apart. And given the belief a comet wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, we're kind of overdue for one. But don't worry, even though NASA admits we aren't really prepared for such an event, researchers have come up with an idea to build a rocket that can be deployed to intercept and destroy a potentially dangerous asteroid.
Ceres, the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt, joins the Moon and Mercury as the only known airless worlds with frozen water on the surface. The stuff has been venting into space, and traces of it have been leaking from the interior for a while. And now we think there's a lot of it lurking just below the surface, too. But water ice doesn't last long in the open on Ceres. Thanks to the harsh sunlight and lack of an atmosphere, it evaporates.
President-elect Trump's critics have something new to worry about tonight. It involves the federal government's decades-old effort to spread American democracy to other nations through the media.
The number of hate crimes against minorities are on the rise in the United States. Attorney General Loretta Lynch has recently spoken out and is condemning the rise of hate crimes, especially those targeting Muslims. Many are blaming the rise on President-elect Donald Trump, who is slated to take his position as commander-in-chief next month.
It appears China has put weapons on its artificial islands, the one it built in the disputed section of the South China Sea. That's according to Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative, which is a think tank that monitors the area and is pretty well respected. It reports China built these structures on a number of reefs, 3 of them, and 4 smaller reefs in the South China Sea. The think tank released these images from all 7 islands. And here's a look at Hughes Reef. It's one of the smaller ones. The group reports that this building is a headquarters. This whole area right here, you can see this is a fully artificial island that's been built up and now houses, among other things, weapons.
This evidence here of Chinese military buildup in the South China Sea, it comes from an American think tank, and it's Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative. These images show that China appears to have installed weapons on all 7 of the islands is built out in the South China Sea. Now, these images, they were taken last month, but they were released this week. Now, take a look at Hughes Reef. This is one of the smallest man-made islands. These squares highlight these hexagon-shaped platforms. They're all believed to hold anti-aircraft guns. There's a much larger base on this reef. It's called the Fiery Cross. And here you can see all 4 defense structures point out to sea.
And speaking overseas, civilians wounded in the Syrian civil war might finally get out of the crossfire. Tens of thousands of civilians have been trapped for years in the Syrian city of Aleppo. Turkish officials say a total of 50,000 people are now able to leave that embattled city. Rescuers are starting, of course, with the wounded. A tenuous ceasefire appears to be holding for now, but much of eastern Aleppo, as you can see, has been reduced to rubble.
Let's talk about something else. ISIS has claimed responsibility for bombing a cathedral in Egypt over the weekend. Now, of course, as you know, Egypt is one of the strongest Arab nations because they have an enormous military. Is this the start of ISIS penetrating Egypt? I mean, it's, you know, they have always held a very strong grip on that country, especially when it comes to any kind of sort of jihadist uprisings. But what do you make of this?
I don't think it's the start, but it's the continuation and the escalation of what ISIS is doing in Egypt. And I think what is incredibly worrisome is what it is an escalation of the sectarian strife that it is sowing. And it is not just Egypt. In Afghanistan, they're doing the same thing. There was a horrendous bombing of a Shia mosque not very long ago. So their idea is to sow sectarian strife, pit countrymen against countrymen, and watch ISIS come in and fill the gap of the chaos that they create. And I don't see any end of that in sight either.
A set of islands known as the Kurils in Russia and the Northern Territories in Japan last changed hands at the end of World War II when they were seized by the then Soviet Union. A meeting between Japan's Shinzo Abe and Russia's Vladimir Putin later this week has revived hopes that the deadlock can be broken. The islands lie in Russia's Sakhalin region.
Without politicizing this, there are some that have said that President Obama should have acted more forcefully. What are Syrians saying? Are the Syrian people feeling as if the United States abandoned them?
Years ago, I think the Syrian people, particularly the young generation of Syrian activists, feel as if the entire international community abandoned them.
This is what ceasefire agreements look like in Aleppo, Syria.
Look how they killed my child. Why, my brother? Why?
These buses were to evacuate rebels and civilians. Instead, they're idle and empty. Russia, Turkey, and rebel forces had agreed to allow fighters and civilians to evacuate Aleppo, returning control of the city to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Syrian government forces have resumed bombing rebel-held territory in Aleppo as Assad's Russian-backed regime and its Iranian allies capture more of the city.
Symbolically, it means that a city that they've struggled to besiege and to encircle and to take for years now is finally theirs.
The United Nations claims pro-government forces have killed dozens of civilians. There are reports of suicides, citizens preferring that over capture by Syrian troops. In more than 5 years of fighting, hundreds of thousands of Syrians are dead, killed as several nations, rebel groups, and terrorist organizations converged on this country. In 2011, it began with hope. Syria joined the Arab Spring, citizens mobilizing to overthrow their oppressive governments. Assad responded with a violent crackdown. The country fell into civil war, with terrorist groups joining the fight to secure Syrian territory of their own. That summer, the Obama administration declared Assad must step aside. A year later, this threat.
A red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized.
Another year later, Assad's forces killed 1,400 near Damascus using sarin gas. Obama decided to walk back from his threat and pursue diplomacy with Assad's ally, Russia. That diplomacy has turned to disgust.
The idea that you would target a playground and bomb kids, hoping that you would then convince people to give up because you'd killed their kids? What kind of a sick mind comes up with a strategy like that? And what kind of civilized country is going to support those tactics? But that's what Russia has done.
And now questions of whether the administration should have engaged further in Syria, beyond airstrikes against ISIS.
There has never been a recognition that civilian population protection is at the heart of avoiding and fighting extremism. Our failure to protect the Syrian population is, I think, the biggest policy failure we did.
As President Obama's term concludes, Syria will be a question for the Trump administration, as it will now decide whether and how to engage Russia and continue U.S. involvement in Syria.
We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite.
In a time of domestic crisis, men of goodwill and generosity should be able to unite regardless of party or politics.